I want to say a few short words about the 13th of Adar, the day that we call today Taanit Ester, or as Sephardim pronounce it Taanit Ester, the fast of Esther. It's really not fully connected to the book of Esther, meaning even though Esther and the Jewish people did fast, but the events that are described in the main part of the book of Esther, when Haman was hanged, all of that was happening in Nisan. In fact, normally we don't fast in Nisan, but of course at that time they fasted even during Pesach itself for 3 days in order to avert the terrible decree. And according to many calculations, Haman was actually hanged on the day after Pesach, after the 15th of Nisan. And there's even a siman, a kind of hint to this, because the word Haman can also mean the man. And it says in the book of Yeshua, Vayishbot Haman mimacharat, that the day after Pesach, man stopped, finished whatever the Jewish people had, the remainders of man. They already entered the land of Israel, and now they were eating regular bread there. So man was stopped the day after Pesach. Haman was, Vayishbot Haman, Haman was also stopped, finished on the day after Pesach. So all of this was happening in the month of Nisan. However, in the month of Adar, almost a year later, 12 months, right, 11 months later, was the main miracle when the Jewish people were not killed, but they were able to kill their enemies instead. By the way, it's not like we're so bloodthirsty. The point is, as the Gra explains, that once the letter was sent originally, where the Jewish people were the main victim, they were supposed to be killed on the day of 13th of Adar. It couldn't be revoked. Whatever was signed with the royal ring was not ever to be revoked. And therefore, all Mordechai could do is send another letter which had one correction to the previous letter, which said, instead of Yehudim, Jews, Oivei HaYehudim, the enemies of the Jews. So it's as if the previous letter had a minor error, actually a full, complete reversal. Instead of the Jews being the victims and being the people who were to be killed on that day, it would be the enemies of the Jews. And everything else, Mordechai had to leave the way it was. That's why the Jewish people weren't really interested in the pogrom. They didn't really try to get the booty. In the previous letter, Haman wanted to encourage the local populations to kill the Jews so that all their property would belong to those who do this pogrom. But Mordechai left the letter the way it was, but the Jewish people actually did not take any trophies. Whatever the case may be, on the 13th of Adar was the day, of course, when the main danger for the Jewish people was. It wasn't clear if, in fact, the people will listen to the first letter or to the second letter, and what in each country will happen. But in the end, it was the Jews who were able to kill the enemies. So, the fast of Esther is to commemorate the possibility that a lot of the Jewish people were fasting as the terrible day was approaching, and they were afraid for themselves, and they were fasting most likely. But like I said, that fast is not mentioned in the book of Esther openly. But what is interesting is, in the times of the Talmud, and before, in the times of the temple especially, the day of 13th of Adar was actually a happy occasion for a completely different reason. A few hundred years after Purim was, of course, a miracle of Hanukkah. And 13th of Adar was the second most important day for the Hanukkah, besides the main miracles that happened around winter, right? In the times of from 25th of Kislev and later. That's when we celebrate, of course, the main Hanukkah, 8 days from 25th of Kislev to beginning of Tevet. Sometimes Hanukkah ends on the 2nd of Teves, sometimes on the 3rd of Teves, depending on whether the month of Teves has 2 or 1 Rosh Chodashim. So that's the main celebration. But there is also another day associated with Hanukkah that's mentioned in the books of Maccabees, and of course the Chazal also mention this day, and that is the 13th of Adar. What happened on that day? This was after the main Hanukkah miracle. The wars did not stop. There was still many years that the Jewish people had to fight the enemies. They didn't fully win. It was not that during Hanukkah everything was already a full victory. The wars continued, and one of the wars was against a Greek general named Nicanor. So when the Jewish people were able to kill Nicanor and win the decisive battle, that became the day of celebration, the 13th of Adar, and they used to call it Yom Nicanor. So interestingly, right, the two post-biblical, post-Chumash, if we could call it, holidays after the giving of the Torah, the holidays that happened after already the 5 books of Moshe, meaning we distinguish, of course, what we call biblical in the sense of only 5 books of Moshe, not the entire Jewish Bible, not the entire 24 books. Meaning that the Oraita laws are only the ones that come from the times of Moshe. But what is after is called usually Divrei Kabbalah. For instance, our reading of the book of Esther on Purim is considered a mitzvah midivrei Kabbalah. And similarly for the fast days, certain fast days that were added later in commemoration of the destruction of the temple, that's all called midivrei Kabbalah since it's mentioned in the prophets. Everything that's in the Navi, in the Nevim and Ktuvim, but not in the 5 books of Moshe. So the two main post-biblical holidays in that sense, I'm calling Purim a post-biblical in the sense that it's after the 5 books of Moshe. So the two main post-biblical holidays are of course Hanukkah and Purim. And guess what? They actually converge on the one day when there was a greatest sakana, greatest danger for the Jewish people. In the Purim times was the 13th of Adar, and of course the day when the Jewish people won a major battle in the times of the Greeks, in the times of Syrian-Greeks, and that is Yom Nicanor. So that converged on the 13th of Adar. So it used to be that on this day you were actually forbidden to fast. In the temple times they used to have a list of days for every month when certain miracles happened to us, or certain, not necessarily miraculous, but when the Jewish people were saved from danger, and on those days you were not allowed to fast. So 13th of Adar was one of those days. Yom Nicanor was a day you were not allowed to fast. Today, of course, we will fast on Taanit Ester, although it's a less strict fast day than many other fast days, and therefore in certain cases when people are not feeling well or whatever, they don't have to fast. So the 13th of Adar was actually a day when you couldn't fast, but today after the destruction of the temple, the laws of those days, except for Hanukkah and Purim, all the other minor holidays are gone, and therefore it's permitted to fast on the day, and moreover we do fast, as the Shulchan Aruch tells us. Well, what I wanted to share with you is very interesting find of Professor Alexander Rothenberg, who discovered that this day is apparently encoded with what's called Torah Codes, meaning equidistant skip of letters, in the Torah. And that is 13th of Adar Purim, right? That comes out to 11 letters. So there is a code for it. There is a place in the Torah where it's equidistantly, these letters are equidistant from each other with a specific number of skips. This is very rare for such a long sequence. Something like a 7 or 8 letter word is not too uncommon to appear. But a sequence of 11 letters randomly will almost never appear. Just try for yourself. Those who have a program to check computer codes, Torah codes with a computer, can for instance try some other date. Take any random date, 15th of Nisan, 22nd of Iyar, and Purim afterwards. Right? Make a sequence like that and try to see if that will come out. Yeah? Most likely, almost no other sequence will come out. It's only the 13th of Adar Purim, that sequence actually comes out in the Torah. He also found other things around that sequence, which I'm not going to go into. So it might be, again, the topic of Torah codes is very controversial, and many mathematicians, including religious ones, don't believe there's any specific information encoded that way, and they think that it's all a coincidence. But those who believe that Torah codes exist, this might be one of the supportive pieces of evidence, not, of course, fully decisive, but at least one of the supportive pieces of evidence is this interesting find, Yehuda Purim. And on this I want to end. Please press like if you like this video.